guys, this is Alex, and welcome back to the Two Dudes, Brews, and Reviews podcast. Today, we're talking about District 9, the beloved 2009 science fiction film that deals with heavy themes of institutional racism. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you have any music or movie-loving friends, consider telling them about us too. With that being said, we hope you enjoy the show.
What's good, homie?
Well, Austin, there hasn't been that much new in the camp of Getter lately. After we did the Fargo episode last time, I went on a little bit of a Coen Brothers streak. I was watching a few of their movies.
Like True Grit, right? I know that one.
I watched True Grit and The Big Lebowski, and I also watched Burn After Reading. All very good movies for completely different reasons. I can see that you just tried the beer.
Slightly. Just keep going.
Other than that, I started going to the gym again.
Yeah.
For the first time since 2019, so pre-pandemic, and that feels pretty good.
Why does pre-pandemic era feel like a fashion statement, like blanket statement for a fashion subgenre?
It's like a historical divider now, dude. It's you know how we have BC and AD
and pre and post 9/11.
Yeah, now we've got pre-pandemic and
post-pandemic.
Although I don't think we're not post-pandemic yet.
Nah, we're never getting post-pandemic. Dude, isn't that fucking weird? Great. I love it.
I guess we should let the listeners know.
We're drinking a beer called Zap Pink Lemonade. It is a pink lemonade sour IPA.
Does it say who makes it?
It is by... All the information is in white lettering on a light pink. The graphic design on this is incredible. It's Nickelbrook Brewing Company. Say that 5 times fast.
I probably can't even say it once.
Oh, it's fucking good though.
I like it. Yeah, it's refreshing. It's way more on the sour side than the IPA.
That makes me happy because I'm all about that tart beer. So this is a great pick. It's got an alien saucer on the front, and it ties in perfectly to our theme today. We have the old mothership from District 9 trying to symbolize there. So this is your first time watching this movie, correct?
Yes, it is.
Did it live up to any expectations I had laid down or you had heard of?
Well, the only thing you really told me about the movie before I watched it was that it was very violent. When you said that, I wasn't expecting the level of violence that I got. Mm-hmm. It was way more than I thought it would be.
Yes. The movie, while great, as far as story, in my opinion, it also is a great tech demo for gory special effects.
Pretty much, yeah.
Mixture between practical and CGI of 2009. So
this movie is very well regarded, and I've seen people call it one of the great science fiction films of the post 2000s era. And I can't make a statement on that because I don't watch that many science fiction movies. I don't know about you.
My favorite science fiction movie besides Interstellar would have to be John Travolta, Battlefield Earth or something. I'm just kidding.
Dude, you better be careful. I'm going to recommend it one of these days.
We're going to get Scientology pamphlets in the mail. If we keep talking about it. I don't know. Moon and...
Blade Runner 2, probably.
Well, yeah, Blade Runner 2049 is probably my favorite sci-fi film outside of Interstellar. Honest to God, I don't really think about this movie in a science fiction. The alien aspect only serves as a vehicle to try to make comments on certain humanitarian problems, to say the least, racism and gang violence and bureaucracy.
Yeah, government greed and stuff like that.
And it's although it's a movie about aliens, it's really not. Like I said, it's just a vehicle for the story to move through and try to tell a bigger picture and also blow people apart and blow shit up in a spectacular way.
I've been really excited to talk about this, but it's not for the reason you would think it would be. I think this is the first time I've come to the podcast and I don't have a concrete opinion about how I feel about the movie. Really? Kinda, yeah. I'll get into some of the stuff, but I was hoping this conversation would help me like navigate my feelings about the movie a little bit.
Okay. Luckily for you, I have some good questions to ask you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, should we go over the plot first?
Sure.
For maybe the few listeners that don't know what this movie is or what it's about.
Well, there is a little encampment known as District 9, and it houses aliens that look like very insect-like, very shrimp-looking, bipedal aliens. And they are almost like in favela slums that you would see in Brazil, but they are in South Africa. And the mothership stopped over top of South Africa, this little city.
It's Johannesburg.
Yes. From there, the movie doesn't really dive too deep into like a lot of the backstory because it's like just a few 3-minute maybe. It's like almost found footage, similar to like Cloverfield, Cloverfield Monster, what that fucking movie called?
Yeah, it's just called Cloverfield.
There's another one, like Chronicle.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
I used to love that movie.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, so these aliens, they basically house these aliens in like these shitty slums, and the whole point of the film is to basically, in a bureaucratic way, evict these aliens and move them away from Johannesburg into these basically white tents, almost like a concentration camp type looking thing.
As spoken by our protagonist, quite literally.
And our protagonist, what's his fucking name?
It's Wikus.
Wikus. I just know him as the guy with the mustache.
Well, that's a good way to describe him.
He is tasked with giving these people their eviction notice and getting them to sign the paper going. It's quite funny because the aliens are given they're portrayed in such a humane or like a humanitarian way where like we personify them so much as like being people and like we're evicting them from their apartments basically. So the whole point is that he's going door to door and his father-in-law runs the whole operation and gives him the lead. From there, we dive into our story.
Shit goes off.
Shit goes off real fast. It's basically a military operation disguised in a bureaucratic way. So, like, trying to be pen and paper, but with, machine guns right next to you while you're doing it.
The government's hired, like, these, like, private contractor military types. So it's not even like the police. Like, you're right. It's, like, riot gear and, like, not quite tanks, but armored vehicles and stuff like that.
Helicopters and shit like that. And then on top of that, there are other factors at play outside of that, which is like gang violence. So there's other South Africans that like will sell. There's like no real great food source for these. So they're called prawns, which is almost like their slur name for the aliens because they look like crawfish, like I said, shrimp-like.
Like a Zoidberg from Futurama, sort of. But I don't know if you ever watched that. But.
Like anorexic Zoidberg with an exoskeleton. Yeah. You get these people trying to sell the prawns cat food and like raw meat.
At very extravagant prices, like treating it as like a commodity when it's obviously very low quality, like nutrition
and also alien technology is like a thing that's in play. So it's got like all these different factors. It's almost kind of like real life people. Like there are commodities and there are people in the way of those commodities and there are bureaucracies and gangs that want weapons and power and material resources. And then there are like the people that stand in the way of that technically own it.
It's an interesting premise for sure.
My introduction to this movie was through my dad when I was younger. I got to watch this movie whenever it came out. Like, I think this is back when Netflix would send you DVDs in the mail.
Oh, wow.
My dad got this one on, he was all about that shit, bro. He'd be like, the queue back in the day, your queue was the movies that you had lined up to be sent to you in the mail as they were readily available. That's what the queue was back in the day. Before
your dad was on top of the game, man.
Bro, he was fucking ready. And this is like, Blockbuster was still a thing when this was a thing.
That's weird to think about.
Blockbuster and Netflix existed at the same time, but the difference is that Netflix was straight to consumer through the mail rather than having to go to a brick and mortar store. And so you got this shit sent in the mail and we watched it. And I remember as a kid, ultra violent, dude, like this shit fucking rocked my little 13-year-old brain or whatever the fuck. How old was I? I would have been 10 when it came out. So I don't know if we watched it a few years later, but dude, Ooh.
I remember when this movie came out, like I remember like the marketing campaign where like the trailers would show all of the like humans only signs and stuff like that. So like the movie was like marketed really well. And I think they even did in major cities they would put up signs that said like report non-human activity. Really cool idea, honestly. But like at the time, I was probably like just going into high school when this movie came out, and I've never been a big alien type guy when it comes to movies. So like I just didn't pay it any attention whatsoever. So I was very excited when you recommended this movie because like I'm a lot more open-minded now, or at least I'd like to think I am.
I appear as such.
Yeah, this was an interesting movie, and we can start moving into like the elements that we liked and maybe some of the ones that I disliked.
Maybe this will get the ball rolling. As far as like acting goes, you can tell that this movie kind of has like a slightly above B-level feel to it.
Very much so.
And so outside of that, outside of our main character, I thought the acting was great from him.
Oh, he was excellent. Yeah, he was awesome.
There were times in the film where I thought the acting was like shitty and lackluster from like side characters, like particularly like his wife and like the father-in-law. That shit was driving me nuts.
I was thinking the exact same thing. There's a scene where the father-in-law and his wife are like having a conversation, and it's like when he's in the hospital and she doesn't know what's happening with him. And the way it's shot and acted, I felt like I was watching a soap opera, kind of.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. Yep.
Yeah. Like it was like the camera quality was like, kind of changes a lot throughout the film. And I know that's due to like the style. We're like mixing up documentary footage and found footage and like security cameras, and it's all over the place.
Let's just say the wife is bad at fake crying. You know what I mean? Like if your husband's in like distress and like your father's telling you that he's no longer, like you probably should let him go, he's not going to make it, that shit should wreck you. And like I didn't feel like that serious, you know? That shit bothered me a lot. One thing that I kind of didn't like about also the father-in-law was that he felt so ruthless, even though like I know like his job and like he probably already looks down on Wikus and like probably thinks he's a fucking loser, but like bro, you wouldn't want to kill the guy, but
yeah,
you know what I mean?
He was a little like one-dimensional. Like it was kind of like the evil, like the mustache twirling kind of evil that you see like in, you know, some of the dumber movies.
Unfortunately, he doesn't have a mustache. He's mostly just like a bald white dude, old man, like that fits the great corporate America. So like Wikus, he works he works like in the office space basically. He's surrounded by like you said, like paramilitary, like militia type, gun for hire, private sector, contracted killers. So like that becomes more important as we move along, but we kind of get to uncover as Wikus is going door to door once the movie really gets rolling about 10-15 minutes in. You're kind of getting introduced to like District 9 itself. Like prawns will kill each other, like prawns will try to kill the military, and like this shit's just happening. Like it's like another,
every day type
like another
stuff.
Tuesday. Yeah, no big deal. People are getting blown apart and arms are ripped off and all crazy shit's happening. You get to see like breeding of the prawns, like that shit. Wikus is saying like they pop like popcorn.
This is something we'll have to talk about once we get to him as a character.
Well, we can talk about him right now. He's fucking Borat. He's fucking Borat in District 9 just running around at like in the first 15 minutes. His accent is so thick.
The first like 15 to 20 minutes of the movie kind of make him look like a total dimwit. And God, dude, this character kind of frustrated me a lot, and I don't know if that was the intention.
In what ways?
He wasn't very likable for most of it, in my opinion. And like, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, there were a couple of moments, like key moments in the film, where I'm like, "Hey, fuck you, man."
And I think like for the first 30 or so minutes, I wasn't convinced he was the protagonist. I was thinking, this is like one of the bad guys, and then like we'll be introduced to our protagonist later.
Which you probably thought was one of the prawns.
Yeah. And like it kind of happens. I mean, like we're introduced to Christopher and his son, who I think is nameless.
Your boy. I think he just calls him your boy or something.
I was thinking like, okay, Wikus is like the bureaucrat, like dimwit, and like we're gonna go to the prawn side of the story to like kind of humanize them.
Mm-hmm. In a way, we do.
Sorta.
Go ahead.
Once like Wikus gets infected with the fluid and starts to become a prawn himself, that's when I realized like, oh, this story is like his story. So like we're gonna be following him for the rest of the movie. I had a hard time warming up to him because I thought his stance on the prawns was very all over the place. Like, how do you feel about this? Because like when he's doing the eviction notices, like he comes across like very like he's brainwashed by the general consensus of like what other people think about them. But like at some points he's kind of a pacifist and he's like, no, like don't shoot them. Like he like kind of protects them in a way. But then in the next scene he's like, they're catching baby eggs on fire and he's like laughing and being all giddy about it. And I was
I think
what is it? Like
I think it's because that was kind of like against policy in a way.
They're not supposed to breed.
Not supposed to have more. And
because he even makes a comment to Christopher later on and he asks, he's like, do you have a license to have your kid? And I'm like, that's a really interesting concept. What they do in China, kind of, where like you're only allowed to have like one child or something like that.
We're getting into it already. Whether it's intentional or not, I think the movie does a good job of commenting on like bureaucratic racism, like institutionalized racism, stuff like that.
Like it becomes so like normalized.
Where, you know, Wikus is acting out of, or excuse me, how do I put this? If he's acting in service of his company and his job, and then there are moments where he acts in, you know, in service of himself and his humanity and like sympathizing. And then there are things that will break policy, and there are things that he does out of the greater good, and then there are things he does to benefit himself, even though it disregards everything else. It's his story, and he's moving through it, and he makes the choices that he makes, but also the movie comments on like displacing these people, trying to move them somewhere else, whether they want to or not, but trying to like whitewash it and like have like pen and paper on the front end of it rather, but like in reality, like if you don't want to go, like we're going to make you go. That's like, and this is all like the first 15 to 20 minutes, and it serves no purpose outside of just to set up our story after this point forward, but kind of gives you like a good power dynamic to show where the prawns lie and what humans want. They are tired of the violence that the prawns bring, the flourishing of gangs, and like they spill over into the streets outside of District 9 and yada yada yada. So they would rather have them somewhere away from human civilization. Now that we've like laid our groundwork, is there like something about the film that like really resonated with you that like you really grabbed onto? Like it could be thematic or
yes to both of those things. I mean, like the whole idea that the movie's set in like Johannesburg, South Africa, which is like not many movies are set
in South Africa, yeah.
Yeah, like in general, really. And this movie was like filmed in the country. I think like the whole thematic thing, the direct correlation to like the Cape Town District 6 that happened in real life is really interesting. I think like those things, like the premise itself is what really grabbed me about this movie. When it comes to alien movies, it's constantly the story of a spacecraft comes to Earth and like there are these superior beings that will like kick the humans' ass because they're smarter than us. They have better technology.
Some war of the world shit.
Like Independence Day, like yeah, stuff like that. Like they're gonna blow up the White House, or you know how these movies usually go.
Yeah, some dumb shit.
This movie was interesting because like the aliens were kind of weak. Like they were like uneducated, like worker.
Yeah, I think it's established that like they were kind of like a basically like a working class alien, that they like serve some greater purpose.
And they're supposed to have like this like hive mind mentality, but when they arrive to Earth, they have like no leader. And I don't know if that means like the leader died en route to Earth or like what happened. That's never told to us. But it's interesting that like they're kind of like the underdog in the story. That's like one of the aspects of the movie that I enjoyed the most.
And also the power dynamic is different. Like you said, it's usually like they have the upper hand, and it's nice to see that the aliens have the underdog role. Also, just as we get into it, since they're trying to harness alien technology, like the alien weapons can only be used by aliens, and like humans can't use them because like their DNA or like
It's like biologically ingrained, kind of.
Yes,
It's the same way with the ships and everything.
I know when they make first contact, they go up to the mothership and like have to cut their way through everything, and it's a different way to set up the story compared to like finding, you know, like an alien, for example, like, you know, some sort of xenomorph is like killing all the humans and it's like a fight against the humans, but really it's like you're getting the alien human pair team up and then they fight against humans.
I think like that whole alien coming to Earth and dominating thing is kind of like a played out trope, though. Like,
Yeah,
thank
everybody's
God.
tired of that.
Yeah, like this movie like sticks out just for the way it kind of like subverts your expectation of what an alien movie is supposed to be.
I think one of my favorite things that gets shown in the film is when Wikus gets taken to the hospital, and after he's had his arm bandaged and everything, you know, he starts developing, you know, the prawn hand and everything, and his DNA is starting to change, and he's losing his teeth, and he's slowly turning into a prawn when they're doing his test on him and everything with the weaponry and stuff. This shit's kind of disturbing in a way that like the humans they have so much power over the aliens. They are like basically mutilating the bodies and trying to somehow find a way to integrate human alien hybrid in a way that we can use their technology and, you know, military power over other countries, yada, yada, yada. There's like practical effects that are going on when this happens. And like even Wikus comments like, what are you doing to those prawns? Like you getting all these scientists and biologists like massacring these prawns and like dissecting them. And like treating them like animals, basically, like, or they're not intelligent, not sympathizing with them. That shit's super disturbing. And like the practical effects during this scene were, in my opinion, fucking great. Like being able to mix in the CGI of the prawns and then like also having like real practical prawn laying out on a table. And this shit was just really interesting to me. And it was one of my like favorite scenes. It was so disturbing because they make Wikus shoot the alien technology and then he ends up having to shoot a prawn. There's no way to he's like, why do I have to shoot a prawn? It's to show that the government, like I can't remember what the fucking organization's called, but
they're Multinational United, MNU.
Yes. They don't fucking care. They have like a mission to accomplish, a quota to meet, like research to do. And the prawns are just like a resource. They mean nothing. Also, his acting in this is great. His suffering is so believable. It's excellent.
I think one of the best examples of that is when they're trying to get him to shoot, and he's like, "No, I will not shoot again, sir." And like the sweat dripping down his face and like the desperation in his eyes, like the acting is like totally nailed here. It's really interesting, dude, because this is his first movie. Like, he might have had some, like, minor roles before, but, I mean, like, he got the lead in this movie because he was, like, buds with the director.
So here's the thing. The movie that the director directs after this is Elysium with Matt Damon. I've seen that movie. Not as good.
I've not seen it.
I've also seen Chappie. The movie fucking sucks. I remember like being really hyped for it, and I think this is one of the other movies that my dad got in fucking mail on Netflix.
Yeah.
Same with Elysium. Yeah, dude, that shit sucked.
That bad, huh?
Elysium wasn't so bad. I think that one was like filmed in South Africa too, but at least it felt remotely the same. Very like slummy. Chappie fucking sucked. The special effects were good, but the story was just ass. And the thing is, Wikus is in both of those movies. He plays different characters, obviously.
I've heard he plays the villain in Elysium.
His name's like Kruger or something, and he's like he's basically like a modified like cybernetic human being, almost like Terminator-esque, but with a human body, like contract killer kind of deal. He's really good. I mean, he plays a really believable villain. But like, I feel like the lead with Matt Damon isn't great, in my opinion. Like, although it's a cool movie, I don't know. Something about it just didn't hold the same weight.
Yeah.
Also, like, it didn't like blow you out of blow your mind. Because like this movie has like I want to say like had like a relatively small budget. It's a small director with a big budget
for District 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie was made on a $30 million budget.
Which in 2009, I'm not sure what the inflation would put on that, but this movie like crushed like as far as like budget to profit ratio.
It made it over $200 million worldwide, I believe. I would consider $30 million to be a very small budget, considering like
the special effects.
Everything looks really good.
There's a few moments in the movie where I caught it because I'm not to be like I'm fucking a trained professional, but like I caught some things where like I knew it wasn't right.
I thought like the mech suit kind of looked fake in a few scenes, and then maybe some of like the exploding body stuff was a little mid 2000s like YouTube editing kind of.
That was one thing I wanted to say. That the movie almost feels like a YouTube movie with a big budget.
Yeah.
But like also it doesn't succumb to like shitty like writing. You know what I mean? Like it has its moments where it really shines, but then there's a couple moments when you feel like this could have been like in a special effects demo for like a YouTube channel.
I think the effects worked when they needed to the most though. And that was when it comes to like the portrayal of the prawns. I'm not saying that this movie looks like a 2021, like graphics wise,
but it's aged well, in my opinion.
Definitely. And like I was always immersed when the prawns were on screen. Like they didn't stick out in a negative way or anything.
Like special effects are difficult because lighting plays the biggest role, especially when you're mixing a CG character and like an on-set person. Like shit like that matters. But there wasn't any. There was just a few moments, and one of them was like in the first 30 minutes of the film where there's like an aerial view, and I couldn't help but notice that all the prawns were the same color in like this mono red.
Yeah,
and I caught that. And now there's a great YouTube channel that like is really popular. They've done VFX react to District 9 and many other films, but Corridor Crew, they're like a special effects channel, and they like run they have this big warehouse that they all work in. I'll show you some other time, but if anyone knows what I'm talking about, they'll understand like, dude, they could make this movie now, today. They're great, and they react to things. And so I've seen their videos over the last couple of years where like they point out like different flaws in modeling and lighting and like things that make scenes work and what makes them don't work. When the mech catches the bullets with that magnetic,
looks a little dated,
don't you think? Because like the shells are like matte. Like
there's like no texture to them.
Yeah, they don't have any gloss. They don't have like any like dynamic lighting on it, so that kind of looks kind of cheap and fake. That's like you catch little moments like that where like we're like spoiled with today's films and today's special effects because everything is so like streamlined, and most of the time everything looks really clean and crisp, and it's hard to like distinct reality, and we're spoiled. But dude, when this shit came out, we were like, oh, this shit's fucking dope. Like you didn't have any questions.
I think it's kind of impressive because he didn't try to hide the special effects. Like every scene in this movie takes place during the day almost.
Oh yeah.
Like, like in older movies when they had to like rely on CGI, they would film at night, like in the rain or something where they can obscure like what you're looking at. Like Jurassic Park, for example. Like that movie does that. And it looks really great, like even by today's standards. This movie is like broad daylight in the desert.
Usually like no dynamic lighting, straight sunlight, just like one source of light. Yeah.
And a lot of stuff still looked impressive, like in those conditions.
And I think a big part of that has to do with the integration of practical effects. Also, like the slums looked so believable. All the junk everywhere, like newspaper and like broken tech everywhere. Like when you get, when we're like Christopher and his boy, like there's just like computer parts everywhere. Like they're foraging on human technology. I guess if you were to film on a pile of trash, it would be pretty believable. But, it does a pretty good job of trying to really build some good world building. It feels like we're just jumping into this world.
I could be wrong about this, but I think that I read the District 9 scenes are actually filmed in a place where like refugees were being moved to.
Whoa.
I think. Either that or it was a place that they were moved out of.
Okay.
Which, if they were moved out of it, that means they were probably going to a lesser, even shittier area. So, like, knowing that kind of like drives the political themes of the movie like forward even more for me. Like, oh my god, like this isn't built for the movie. It's not a set. It's a real place.
It is like Slumdog Millionaire, if you've ever seen that movie.
I have not.
Well, the main actor in Slumdog Millionaire plays in Chappie. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's very believable. I mean, bro, we were so lucky. Look at us fucking sitting here with fucking microphones and beers and fucking laptops. And we're sitting here like, this trash looks real believable. Did you have like a favorite scene? I think mine had to have been like the operating type, underground lab shit. That was probably one of my favorite scenes. That and when they break back into it. But did you have like a favorite scene?
I can't say that I have like a favorite scene in particular. I will say that I think the first 30 minutes of the movie, like just like the setup, like the documentary stuff was like done so perfectly. And like got me really invested in the world, and like it like kind of like did a lot of world building in a short period of time. I don't want to like name like an action piece or something and be like, that was my favorite scene when the mech suit built up all the bullets and shot them everywhere, even though that was really cool. No, there wasn't like one particular scene. Well, actually, you know what? I do have one. I found there to be a lot of like dark comedy in this movie.
I think you just read my mind, but continue.
And the scene where he comes home after being infected and like he's like talking to his wife and he's like, honey, I need to go lay down.
Shit his pants and shit.
And
he
like
said like I shit my pants or something.
And the lights flip on. It's a surprise party. So now he has to deal with all these people. I love awkward, horrible situation type stuff in movies like that. And it got a good hearty laugh out of me.
Fucking that, you said dark comedy, that scene and the scenes with like the gang lords fucking were hilarious. And I know I had to have been intentional, but like the fucking witch doctor aspect of like having, if you eat the alien, you'll get their powers. And
it was kind of over the top,
dude. That shit was like, that shit was cracking me up. He's like, how did you get that arm? Tell me, I want that arm. Like that shit was fucking cracking me up.
I also laughed a lot during the part where he's like on the run and he goes to the burger shop.
Yes.
And like he's trying to order a burger and like on the TV screen it comes up and like the newscasters are insinuating that he like had sex with aliens.
Prolonged sexual intercourse.
And there's even like a still shot that's been edited and like blurred out of him behind an alien.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious.
And he doesn't try to explain the situation.
He just only wants that food, man.
He just says, "You are legally obliged to serve me." Yeah.
Those are.
He doesn't even say like, "I didn't do that."
Yeah.
Like, he's like, "Give me that fucking hamburger."
Fucking. He's Borat, bro. He is fucking Borat. It's so fucking funny.
Since he was like such a dimwit, I kind of got a lot of entertainment out of his like misfortune in this movie.
Yeah.
Like not the parts where he's like about to be surgically amputated and like he's being forced to do the weapon stuff. Like that was like, nobody should have to go through that. But like some of the other stuff was like him puking on the birthday cake and like just, I found that stuff so funny because I kind of hated this character like at this point in the movie.
Yeah, he's kind of likable in the way that almost like victim mentality. But then also, we also should establish like his whole thing is that he needs to break back in to get that vial so that, because it was supposed to be fuel to go back up to the mothership for Christopher, because he has a small little ship underneath his slum little shack that he's hid down there. He like betrays Christopher at times and like but also
more than once.
Christopher also betrays him, saying like, I'll be back in 3 years. It'll take 3 years to fix you. Like he needs to go back home and, get more fuel. That way he can come back and save his people. And I don't know if it's insinuated, but like, I think Christopher is like the captain, like the leader.
I don't know actually, because like it's kind of insinuated like he's like the only intelligent one among these million aliens.
While the rest of them fight over like food and bullshit, like he's the one that's like looking for a way back. Like he's trying to collect technology and all that shit.
I would actually say that, like, I didn't feel like what he did to Wikus was a betrayal, though, because I thought his motivation was a lot stronger than, like, what Wikus was trying to do.
Unfortunately, what happens to Wikus is only because he got like this. He was so overconfident because he was on camera, you know, like shooting for his fucking company. He's out there saying like, "Oh, look at this! Look at this! You see this? This is illegal!" Like saying shit like this, and quite literally blows up in his face, and it, you know, he becomes infected, it becomes an alien, and yada yada. But basically, like him being a show off, like feeding into his like ego and his like leadership status, like gives him like this negative situation. And yes, like Christopher, his motivation is stronger because it's like, I could fix you now or I can fix you later. The difference is I can save my people because it took 20 years to get the fuel, or you can wait 3.
And he didn't realize like the severity of the situation until he saw like humans testing on the other prawns, like when they broke into the facility.
To get it, yeah.
So that's like what changes his tune, sort of. Even though I'm a little confused because like he's been living in District 9, so he kind of already sees how the humans treat
but
other prawns. Like maybe that was just too extreme.
I think the dissecting, you got to think, because if you walked into a basement and saw people being dismembered and like shit like that, it would be your race, and like you would see that and you would like want to fix that problem before you fixed somebody of a different species that was also, you know what I mean? So if you humanize the alien, go in the alien shoes, his whole thing is like,
wow, this is way worse than I thought it was.
He thought it was like, it was more of like a military, but they were like testing and like killing, and also the prawn on the table was his friend that was with him in the beginning.
Oh, was it?
I don't know I think that's what it was trying to insinuate.
Ah, okay.
If not, that's what I thought it was. But regardless, you know, it's his race being dismembered and getting to see like the whole underground web of bullshit going on. So I think his motivation is a lot better than Wikus's. And obviously by the end of the movie, you know, Wikus turns into a prawn and lives among them in District 9 and shit. But
I think the reason I was so frustrated with like the Wikus character is because I didn't believe his arc in the end that much. Like, it didn't move in the direction I thought it was going to. Like, when he started to become a prawn, I'm like, okay, he's gonna start humanizing the prawns more, because he's like, okay, like now I know what it's like to live here and like all that. But like his selfishness keeps coming out until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, maybe.
Yeah, I think
like he does save the day in the end, but like he really fucks things up for a while too.
I think it's complicated because he's hanging on to his humanity, like in the fucking 72 hours that all this is happening in. And it's difficult. I mean, can you imagine? And I definitely was trying to like fill the shoes and like, you know, have, was it empathy or sympathy? Fuck your vocabulary. You know what I mean?
I think they both work. Yeah.
But just being like, okay, could you imagine having like going home to your wife every day and like having a job and like, you know, just being a normal ass guy, and then like having, you know, you're watching yourself literally transmute into a fucking different thing, all on top of you're on the run from a fucking government facility, you know, you're being literally tracked down by, this man's in like extreme distress, you know. So there's that to consider. You're playing devil's advocate and I'm playing Devils Angel-cate on, you know, angel and devil on the shoulder. And so you got to think like, this man probably doesn't even know what the fuck is going on himself. Like his emotions are probably so fucked up. I mean, I didn't really question it. Maybe that's the goody two shoes, good old boy in me. And I know he like plays the victim mentality, but also I sympathize with him a little bit. His like manic behavior is very believable to me, given the circumstance.
That's true. At first, I wasn't sure about this character trait, but I kind of like bought into it on my second viewing of the movie, where someone who has like a really biased view against something like the racist overtones, it'd be really hard to change that's kind of showcased where like he kind of shows sympathy for the prawns at some point. Like even when after his arm's been transformed and Christopher's son like puts his arm up to hit like to Wikus's.
We are the same.
He's like, we are the same, and then he's like, we're not the fucking same.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like he's like torn between like what he used to believe and like what he's kind of like coming into in a way. So I thought the movie played that aspect up like really well.
Yes, delicious. Did you have like at least like a favorite action segment? Is it like the big climactic ending, or we can at least touch upon?
It wasn't the ending actually. It was when he's captured by. It's near the ending. It's when he's captured by the Nigerian gangsters, and then Christopher's son like hacks into the alien technology to where the mech suit comes alive and kind of like kills off all the people in the room.
Yes,
I thought that part was really sweet,
quite gloriously. I
don't have much to say about the ending action piece because it actually is one of my gripes about the movie a little bit.
Do you feel like it takes that like that action blockbuster role?
It doesn't feel like it fits the rest of the movie. At least like it doesn't fit what I thought the movie was going to be. Because like the first 30 minutes like set up the whole like political theme. I was looking forward to like a drama science fiction movie with political themes of like, okay, like how are our main heroes gonna like persuade the public to like care about the prawns, or like I thought I was going in that direction, or like I wanted to see more civilian prawn interaction stuff, kind of. And then when it turned into like
more of like a heist, like you know,
like first person shooter type stuff later on, I was kind of disappointed a little bit.
No, I get it.
The scenes where that stuff happened were still really cool and like well executed, but it wasn't the direction that I was like hoping the movie would go in.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like the movie was already set up like something that I'd never seen before. The aliens are refugees and like all this stuff. I just wasn't expecting like hundreds of people to be turned into a pool of blood by the end.
I think here we go. It's like a Tarantino-esque type feel to it because the action and gore is so over the top, especially like when people are literally like being turned into bits of fucking blood and they're just very over the top,
literally popping like a balloon.
Yes,
at some points.
And that shit, honestly, for what it is, I fucking love it.
No, I mean it's still entertaining. Yeah.
But you wanted the drama, which like I get, bro. You're a little. I mean, that's cool, bro. You don't like cool shit, bro. That's fine.
Well, you know how I am. To quote Birdman, I love my philosophical talking bullshit in movies, and this wasn't really that kind of movie. Like by the end,
and
that's all right.
We're in the same category, bro. I like to feel.
Yeah,
I like to feel. I want to hurt. Damn it. But yeah, I enjoyed that shit. It was so over the top. It's almost comedic, very Tarantino-esque, and I enjoyed that shit like a lot.
Dude, the guy getting his arm blown off and then the robot stepping on it and exploding and like splatting blood onto the camera. I laughed.
Yeah, that shit's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Specifically, I knew you would have some over-the-top violence, laughter. There's a reason why I picked this movie. You know, to fill your psychopathic...
Hey, don't come at me.
Hey. But yeah, it's fine, man.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that shit. I mean, this movie's fucking old. This movie's been out...
about 11 years.
Half as long as I've been alive. So, I mean, when I really think about it, like... I mean, 10 years is a long time in my perspective, so... I don't hold this movie dear to my heart. It's not like one of my all-time favorites or anything. It's just something that I came across that I really enjoyed as a kid, and like I feel like it hasn't been talked about by anyone in a long time. I thought it might be interesting for us to talk about, especially since you've never seen it.
No, don't get me wrong, man. I enjoyed watching this a ton, dude.
Do you have any other thoughts? I mean, we're sub-hour right now, but I feel like there isn't a whole lot I want to talk about.
Personally, I thought the main antagonist was a little weak.
What, that being of like the
Jason Statham lookalike guy, which I know the movie wasn't focused on him. Like I enjoyed seeing him getting ripped up at the end.
I'm glad
for
you brought
sure.
this up because I kind of forgot. He's the role that the main character fills in Elysium.
Oh, really?
Of like the gun for hire with no real direction other, and only serves the purpose of to be in the way of the protagonist. He isn't really expanded upon other than the fact that like he just seems like a guy that enjoys killing, which is kind of weak.
Yeah, a little one-dimensional.
This movie has like a 90% on like Rotten Tomatoes. I think this movie had so much hype when it came out that coming back to it, there are a couple things that really lack. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy it. Like you said, I'm glad you brought this up because that shit kind of falls short, in my opinion. The whole like the government, military type complex that's going on, it kind of leans a lot towards the B movie. But then like the aliens and the main protagonist feel like really solid and like really well expanded upon. But like the antagonists, they really just feel like real mediocre, like real generic. Not a lot of depth, not a lot of weight to them. Kind of just served to be a bad guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good point, because the Jason Statham lookalike was like, I didn't like him, but also like I forgot about him quite literally going into the podcast. So that is a major drawback.
Like I couldn't even tell you what his name was.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. Don't fucking remember. I know like he was introduced like in the first few minutes, like when they're getting ready to go out in the field and like having like a weird crazy temper and like knocking shit out of Wikus's hand. But like that shit, I forgot about him. He's not memorable in any way. And I forgot he even exists. There's some drawbacks.
I think the movie leaves off on an interesting note. Good movies should always have you kind of wondering about the world of like what happens after the credits roll. District 9 does a good job at that because it kind of like plays it like a real documentary where you get these like post interviews, and you get like an interview with his former assistant, like the guy that took Wikus's job when he left, and he's like giving his interview from a jail cell, and he's like, yeah, I leaked the data because like I just got on the computer and they didn't even hide it that well. Kind of like spreading M&U's evil they'd done to like the public. I don't know if that sets up like a sequel.
Well, here's the thing, like a sequel has been like in the talks for a very long time, and I think the director is actually working on it now, but it's not a direct sequel. I don't think it follows Wikus. I think it's supposed to expand upon, so like a different storyline. I was reading up on it a little bit. I have no real ground to stand on here, but if there is a sequel, like I don't want to. It may not be about Wikus, so if there is that, but yes, the movie does like the documentary style like helps that a lot. Like you get these like narrators, different people being interviewed throughout, giving you like exposition, basically, or what is that? Is that a correct term? Sorry.
Yeah,
they're trying to set up this grand feel to the movie, like there's something that lies beyond the film, documentary style, like social issue trying to be solved inside of a sci-fi alien movie. But
yeah,
the movie's good. I enjoyed it a lot. It does leave you wondering. He leaves a flower made out of metal on the front door of their house to his wife, and then you get the last shot of the film is a prawn making one, which can only be assumed that it is him. He went undergone the whole transition.
Of course, yeah.
It leaves you wondering, does Christopher come back? What happens to the prawns that are still in District 9? What happened to the military? What happened to his wife?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't even know where his wife stands.
Does his wife believe him? Like, and that was a big theme throughout the movie. Like the wife is conflicted between the father and the husband. Because
like the documentary scenes of the wife kind of show her like she says something about they took all of Wikus's stuff, but I made them bring it back after the investigation. But like during the movie itself, she doesn't seem to believe him. So I'm assuming that like when this dude leaked the information, she probably came back to Wikus's side. It's not explicitly said, but not everything has to be explicitly said. I mean, like if this movie never had a concrete sequel, I think it would stand on its own. As an audience member, it's kind of fun to wonder.
Yeah, it's what makes the movie interesting.
Yeah,
like that's one of the reasons why I think you love The Lighthouse so much, because you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I like it.
I like having my own interpretation of things.
Oh, also we should mention, I think you gave it a 9 out of 10. And I think you mentioned on the podcast that you said
That needed time.
It might be a 10 out of 10, but I need time. And I think you have come to the conclusion that it may be a 10 out of 10 in your book.
It's a 10.
Very nice. Yeah, man, I'm glad you enjoyed that one too.
Yeah, The Lighthouse is one of the best movies I've seen in a long time, dude. That movie's awesome.
Okay, loose rating, even though our ratings are never loose and they always stand concrete. But if you had to give this movie a rating, what would you have to give it?
Jeez. I would probably say like a light 7, maybe.
A light 7?
That might sound a little low, but I think like I enjoyed a lot of things about it, but considering the heavy political and like thematic stuff that I thought was going to be in there, it didn't end up being as deep as I thought it would be, even though I did enjoy the action stuff and all that. But yeah, I think 7 is a fair score for me.
I was going to go 7.5, 8. Yeah, I'm in that range. Like I said, I think the movie had a lot of hype when it came out. So I think 7.5, 8 is probably, this is by today's standards as well. So, I mean, this is coming back to it, 10 years later. I think it stood up pretty well when it came out. And then now that we have a chance to look back on it, like also given the budget, like I think 8 is probably a fair score. Like they worked with what they had. There isn't like some fucking A-list actor in this. This movie was made by some low-level filmmakers that like did an excellent job. So
exactly,
I enjoyed the shit out of that. Getter, send me home with a good recommendation, bro. Spill your beans, Getter.
Okay, so one thing on the podcast that we haven't done yet, and it's a thing that is very prevalent in mainstream culture nowadays, and that is the superhero movie.
Okay.
5 years ago, I sat in a theater and I watched one of the fucking worst movies I've ever seen.
Oh, Christ.
And that is DC's Suicide Squad.
Oh, fuck.
And it was one of the most baffling things I've ever seen. So I hope you don't hate me for that.
No.
And I know I've
never seen this, so...
I know I asked you the other day about if you had HBO Max, and you said no. But I do have a library card, and I can get you a copy of the Suicide Squad very easily.
It's all right, dude. I can either rent it or buy it. That's not a problem.
I got you.
Don't ever stress about that shit.
I don't think you should spend money on this movie.
Okay, glad. And this is a Jack and Jill, motherfucker. Let's do it.
And this is on my mind because I just watched the James Gunn Suicide Squad a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And it was like fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like it was so awesome. And it's like one of the weirdest turnarounds I've ever seen for like a series. I want to go back to the roots and see.
We can fucking trash and talk shit and question and gripe. I'm hyped. Like we're due for it. We've been too nice here lately.
It's not a Jack and Jill type situation.
But mostly like, what the fuck?
Kinda, yeah.
I can't wait to be uncomfortable, and yeah, it's fine. We'll do it. Fuck yeah, dude.
I'm sorry, bro.
No, there's no reason to be sorry. I like to gush, but I also like to shit on things as well, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, okay.
All right, man.
I look forward to it, man.
How do you want to sign these motherfuckers out, man?
With a big old adios.